Hello, friends. How are you? I hope that you all are well. Hope that your weekend was great. And I hope that this week is starting out in a phenomenal way for you. Listen, I'm excited that you're joining me today. We are discussing information that I believe is going to be so helpful for landlords as well as tenants. So, if you are a landlord or if you know someone who is, please tell them to tune in right now. All right, landlords as well as tenants. If this is your first time tuning in, please let me know where you're watching from. I love to give information to viewers in different jurisdictions. Okay, so for the month of May, for my weekly lives, each and every Monday, 7:30 p.m. right here on this channel, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I'm going to be giving information, sharing information throughout the month of May because it is National Mental Health Awareness Month. Okay. And so last month I covered fair housing laws. My goal is to share information that will help renters and viewers who are in contact with people who are tenants or landlords so that the entire rental community could be educated. Is that all right with you? All right. So, again, if this is your first time tuning in, let me just say thank you. If you have comments, please go ahead and drop it in the comment section. I will be taking questions and I won't hold you long, but I will hold you long enough to share the information for today. All right. So before I get started, I just want to acknowledge some people who are here. Hello, Lynn. Thank you so much for tuning in. Beautiful. Hello, Chrissy. I'm sorry, Sissy, who's tuning in from New York. Lynn, which area are you watching from, Lynn? Are you in the DC metropolitan area? I don't remember. I love to know where my viewers are tuned in from. All right, and so just to give a brief introduction of who I am for those of you who don't know me, I am Carissa Spann, the landlord and tenant coach. This is what I do each and every Monday right here on my Facebook or my YouTube channel. I share information that is to help landlords as well as tenants. I am passionate about sharing information. As a landlord and tenant coach, I am a housing educator. I have been in property management and the real estate industry for well over 25 years. And the information that I'm sharing is not legal advice. It is the industry's best practice. And so if you are in need of legal advice, I would strongly recommend to reach out to a landlord and tenant attorney in the jurisdiction that your rental property is in. So whether you're the landlord or whether you are the tenant, there are resources available in the community. And yes, there are resources available for landlords. Okay. So just stay tuned because I'm going to share information that's going to be so helpful for landlords. I've been getting a lot of calls, a lot of emails, and people are asking, well, Carissa, there is so much available for tenants. What's available for landlords? All right. So in jurisdictions that are pro tenant, meaning that the laws are strongly in favor of the tenant, usually, and in many cases, there are not a lot of resources for landlords. But for this subject matter, I promise if you stay tuned to the end, I will share information. I will give a website that landlords can go to. They can call, they can get information pertaining to this subject matter. All right. So as we're talking about Mental Health Awareness Month, the one thing that I do want to cover is that mental health is a disability. And so last month I talked about fair housing laws. I shared the 7 national protected, the federally protected classes, and disability is one. All right. And so because disability is a protected class, that means landlords cannot discriminate against a tenant. They cannot deny housing or access to housing or services pertaining to housing for those who are renting or purchasing a home. But for a tenant coach, I strictly focus on the rental aspect. All right, we are back We are having some technical difficulties, but we are going to push through. So, for landlords, whether you self manage or you're managing property for someone else, whether it's one unit, two, three, four rental units, or more, please understand that your rental property business, it is a business. All right. And so, those of you know who've been following me, if you treat it like a business, it will pay you like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, it will pay you like a hobby. So it is always in your best interest to treat it like a business. And what does that mean? I'm glad you asked. That means don't wear your emotions on your sleeve. I know sometimes as a landlord that's self-managing your rental property, sometimes your emotions are connected to your rental property. But I promise you that if you treat it like a business, then that should move in many cases the emotional aspect out of it. So, true story. I have clients, I manage property, right? So I have rental property, DC metropolitan area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Then I also own property out of state. All right. So the one thing that I will not do is allow situations that I go through to determine how I run my business. You have to be professional. And when you don't know what to do, maybe contact a professional, maybe contact somebody for some help. But most importantly, know and understand what the law says that you can or cannot do. That's for landlords and that's for tenants. Okay, so understanding the law is the most important thing. Is there still an echo? Slogan, thank you for that. Is there still an echo? I do want to minimize any distractions. I want to get you this information. If there is an echo, please let me know and I will make adjustments accordingly. So treating the business like a business is the most important thing. Sometimes I found colleagues of mine, landlords who were concerned about tenants in the rental property. All right. Sometimes things just don't work out the way that we plan or anticipate or the way that we hope for. All right. So, as a landlord and tenant coach and as a housing educator, one of the things that I place a strong emphasis on when you have vacant rental property or you're trying to get a new tenant, the best thing that you can do is identify your ideal tenant. You have a screening criteria in place, of course, that does not violate fair housing laws or any type of law, whether it's federal, local, or state. All right. But then you also want to screen applicants and prospects to make sure that they meet the criteria. Because the application process is the starting ground, is the starting basis to determine whether or not a person is going to be a good fit. All right. So before a tenant moves in, this is information that you should be collecting. You should get to know your potential tenant. If this is the right tenant, can they afford it? Do they have the capacity? Do they have the character to pay the rent and other things that should go into it? Now, if you are currently in a situation where you have rental property and the tenant is not the ideal, it's not the best tenant, it's not a whole lot that you can do in many jurisdictions unless there is a violation of the lease of some sort. You can't just put a tenant out just because you don't like them. Now, let me just pause and say that I do know housing providers, they find loopholes to get through it. But in cities and states such as Washington, D.C., that is pro-tenant, some of those practices and behavior are strongly prohibited. All right. And there are laws in place that protects tenants. So the most important thing is understanding who you have as a tenant, understanding the lease terms. And if you have a dispute, if you have a question, I would strongly recommend that each of you look at the terms of your rental lease agreement. And of course, the stronger the lease is, the better for both of you because it provides protection. It lets each of you know who's going to be responsible for what. You can't always control a person's behavior. Let's take landlords, for instance. There are some good ones and there are some bad ones. Listen, I've been around the block several times, almost 3 decades in property management and real estate. And I can assure you that all landlords and housing providers are not the same. Some are educated, some are not. Some have a heart for what they do, and some just want the money. And rightfully so. They own the property. Well, Who's to say what they can and cannot do if they are in it for the money, because they do have to pay the bills. Now, as it pertains to tenants, there are some good tenants and there are some bad tenants, right? So I've passionately talked about tenants from hell because I've had quite a few in my day and time. All right. So, but when it comes to mental health, we as housing providers and landlords, we must adhere to the law. All right. So I'm going to bring up a few points for you guys on this evening. So the first point is this. And then you know what, before I get into my points, I just want to bring up the fact that fair housing laws are in place. Okay, so the Fair Housing Act, it came about in 1968 to prevent discrimination. So here's the thing, when it comes to disability, because disability is one of the protected classes, a disability may not always be a physical thing that you can see, because everybody's not going to be in a wheelchair. Everybody may not have a limp or some sort of physical impairment that you can visually see that a person is disabled. A disability can also be a mental disability. All right, so let me just bring that up on the screen because I want you to see what a disability is classified as. Being disabled means that a person has a mental or a physical impairment. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to disabilities, landlords cannot ask tenants what their disability is. So let's say you're a landlord. Okay. I come to you. I want to rent your rental property. Maybe you have a house. Okay. And I say, I have a disability. You cannot ask me what my disability is. That is a violation. That is a prohibited practice. So if you're watching as a landlord and you have applicants or prospects that are coming to you and they say, well, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, I have a disability. I'm disabled. Sometimes people will volunteer that information. All right. And usually when that happens with me, I'll stop the person to say, I don't need to know specifically what your disability is. And I'm careful to do that because if for any reason, let's say I am trying to fill a vacant unit, right? They're getting ready to move in. Maybe they don't meet the criteria when I conduct or complete that background check. If something happens, the background check doesn't come back, they're not approved, and I have to deny that application. I don't ever want anybody to say, oh, well, she discriminated. She denied me because I told her I have such and such disability. You see how that works? Don't put yourself and don't allow yourself to be put in a situation or predicament where something that you genuinely didn't know can cause you to be in a hot seat. All right. And so this is why I do these weekly lives every Monday right here at 7:30 p.m. because sharing is caring. It costs you absolutely nothing to get this free information. Free 99 doesn't get any cheaper than that. Okay. So here's my first point. All right. As I indicated, you cannot ask a prospect, a tenant, an applicant, what their mental illness is or the severity of it. You simply cannot do it. So if you've been doing it, if you know someone who has, please tell them to stop immediately. Because now here's the thing. We are still under the national pandemic, the eviction moratorium. All right. There are going to be a lot of lawsuits, not just filed against tenants, but tenants are going to be filing lawsuits against landlords because landlords have been asking things and doing things that violates fair housing laws. The eviction moratorium has nothing to do with fair housing laws. They're not connected. All right. So please be careful. Please make sure that you are not asking. And if you are a tenant, let me just pause because I've been talking primarily to the landlords and I do have tenants and renters who are watching. If you are looking to rent a place or if you're currently a tenant, your landlord or your potential landlord cannot ask you what your disability is. Okay. So for instance, I had a young lady, true story. I had a young lady who was trying to rent a 4-bedroom home. Okay. And she was a nice young lady. And at that time, I probably would have just rented to her anyway because she was in school. She was a single mom. The background check, she explained that at some point she had some issues, but she had been working on it. She was going through some credit counseling to restore her credit. I love honesty. I will give a person who's had some challenges, I'll give them a chance if they explain it up front. I can work with honesty and truth. So in any event, this young lady, she begins to explain that she has HIV, and everywhere she went, nobody would rent to her. And she was just going on and on and on. And, I tried to stop her to let her know, listen, I appreciate you sharing your story, but I don't need to know the specifics of your disability. Okay. And so turns out I had to go through some extra hoops because things were starting to go the wrong way, but I didn't want it to seem like I was going to deny her because she told me she had HIV. All right. And because I know the law. All right. So, but when you have situations like that, please make sure that you document that situation. Please make sure you document the applicant, the process, what's taking place. So whether it's a prospect, whether it's a tenant, make sure that you document, because sometimes, I don't know if you're like me, sometimes I just don't have the ability to remember everything, every conversation, all the details. So because of that, I'm very thorough with documenting. I will document every single thing from a telephone call to an email to a text communication. And I also follow up in writing with the letter. All right. Sometimes I might have to take pictures or record, but I'm very detailed, and I'm very, very detailed. I'm just like OCC. I'm just like that because I know that it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And so I would rather you have documentation, go above and beyond with documenting. But now let me just say that even if you have to write a book, you don't have to share the book with everybody. Okay. That's for your records. All right. All right. And so let me bring up the second point, because I want people to understand this, that landlords cannot evict a tenant because they have some sort of mental illness. All right. So I've participated with some housing agencies, and I won't state the name, but in this one particular agency, I'm not comfortable renting because sometimes the tenants, they were just not great tenants. Now, I can't say that I won't rent to them flat out because that will be a prohibited practice. But what I am saying is, if I had a preference based off of my experience, it just wasn't good. But then again, I was fairly new coming into the mental illness program. So in this one situation, I had a tenant. He lived on the third floor and he liked to start fires. Okay. He would start a bonfire in the apartment where other people live and families, and, fires spread. Okay. So for whatever reason, I don't know if he was cold or he just liked the look of the fire. I don't know. Okay. All I know is this. He was fascinated with starting small fires. He would just like put stuff in a pot in the center of his floor in the living room. He would just light stuff on fire. So one day the situation, it did get bad, and it wasn't good. There was nothing that I could say to this gentleman that would stop him or to control that behavior. Now, here's the thing. Landlords and housing providers are not case managers. All right. They're not housing specialists. In many cases, they don't provide wraparound services. So what do you do if you're in that situation? You have a tenant who has some sort of mental illness, and they are exhibiting these type of behaviors that create a risk for other residents, for the rental property, as well as themselves. Now, although you cannot evict the tenant merely because there is a mental illness, if they pose a risk to other residents, and you can document the behavior, you can document activities that's taken place, now you can file a suit to have the person evicted. But please let me be clear. that you cannot evict them because they have a mental illness. You can't evict them if there is some sort of lease violation, if they pose a risk. So make sure that you know what the law says. Make sure that you're checking out in your local jurisdiction and the authorities to find out what you must do to legally handle the matter. So here's the one thing that I do strongly recommend. I recommend that as a housing provider, if you have tenants who are displaying this type of behavior, maybe reach out to see if there is some mental health governmental agency in that area. Reach out to them to see if they are able to assist the tenant. Sometimes you may have a point of contact or an emergency contact for tenants. Sometimes it is okay to reach out to that emergency contact to let that person know. Maybe it's a friend or a family member or loved one. It might be a church member, a pastor, a coworker, or whoever. Reach out to that emergency contact to explain that they're listed as the emergency contact and share brief information. Let me just say, you cannot give specific details, all right? You want to make sure that you're still protecting your tenant's privacy. But let that emergency contact know what the situation is and ask them, is there someone that you can refer this tenant to? Is there a doctor, a caseworker, or somebody that can help the tenant? And if that goes wrong, reach out to some sort of governmental agency. Maybe do a Google lookup or whatever jurisdiction that the rental property is in and see if you can get that tenant some help. Now, although if you're like me, you have a heart for the people, you have a heart for what you do and making a difference, and you really want the best for people, you cannot make tenants receive assistance. I had a tenant. He's an elderly man, and bless his heart, he liked to hold on to things for a long period of time. We call those hoarders, okay? They don't like to get rid of anything. He had newspapers from 1930s, okay, stacked along the wall, amongst other things in the apartment that I don't even know how he got inside the apartment, but it was there. He had stuff in his apartment for so long that it became a hazard. It was a trap. Like if anything happened, that entire apartment would have gone up in smoke. So in his apartment, it was infested with bed bugs. It was infested with roaches. And I couldn't get an exterminator to go in because it was so bad. They wouldn't use chemicals because they said, Carissa, if we use chemicals and we do the heat, that apartment is going to go up in flames. So they said, listen, you have to exterminate the apartment before anybody will go in to make repairs. I could not get people to go in to make repairs because it was infested with bed bugs. Okay, so bed bugs. I'm not sure if you know what bed bugs are, but even when I just mention it, it makes my skin cringe. I get goosebumps just talking about bed bugs because in addition to being a property manager and a real estate agent, I'm also a housing inspector. And so this gentleman, bless his heart, he had a lot of bed bugs, and all it takes is one bed bug to get into your clothing. All right. You get a bed bug that lay an egg. Now you have other bed bugs, and at some point it's going to become an issue. So the situation was so bad. I could not get my contractors to go in. I couldn't get anybody to go in to help this man. So I rallied some of my students. I told them, I said, listen, if you would assist me, I will pay you to go in to help me clean this man's apartment and remove things. So at first, he didn't want any help. He didn't want my help. So I contacted one of the local agencies, Office of Aging, asked them if there was a case manager who could assist me with this tenant because we needed to take care of repairs, but there was an infestation problem. And so this gentleman was already in their system. She said, well, Carissa, we've reached out to him to offer him case management services. We would even provide meals for him, but he refused. And sometimes it happened. So I shared that story to say this. Some people will not receive help. That's just the reality. I don't know if it's pride. I don't know if they feel like they can do it themselves, but some people may not receive your help. Don't be offended by it. Don't take it personal. Just know that sometimes people won't welcome you or invite you into that space. Now, eventually it did work out for me because I continued to talk to him, and I would go over, I would call, I would send letters, I would do follow-ups. Hey, Mr. Tenant, this is Carissa. I'm just stopping by today, or I'm just calling to see how things are going. We really need to get these repairs taken care of. So just let me know when you're ready. Then I would ask the question, have you had anybody help you to remove some of your things and your belongings? And he would say, well, yeah, Carissa had somebody to come, but when I told him I had bed bugs, they left. So I thank them. Thank you so much, Mr. Tenant, for your assistance in trying to get that taken care of. I know that it's a challenge, but we really want to take care of these repairs for you. All right. So I'll follow with you in about a week or two. And I stayed on top of it. I kept calling. I kept following up. I kept following up. So I went back and I knocked on the door, and I can see that the place wasn't as crowded as it was before. Now, he still had a lot of stuff in there, but it wasn't as bad as it used to be. And so that was progress. And so as a housing provider and or landlord, if you see tenants are making progress, let them know that I see the progress that you made, because sometimes they want a pat on their back. It makes them feel good. And it makes them feel good on the inside to hear that they have a landlord that, first of all, is concerned and care and will compliment them on the process or the progress that they've made. All right. So some of you may have great tenants and some of you may be great tenants. Good. But that's not everybody's testimony. That's just not everybody's story. And so this is why I do these lives. I do these Facebook and YouTube lives each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. to share information, because there are some people who genuinely just don't know, landlords as well as tenants. Hello, Dr. Baker. Thank you so much for tuning in. And so May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So every Monday, right here at 7:30 p.m., I'm going to be sharing information. And so today I share 3 tips. I'm going to bring them back up on the screen for those of you who tuned in a little late. All right. The first is this. You can't ask a tenant to specifically state what their disability is or the severity of it. You cannot do it. Secondly, you cannot, absolutely unequivocally cannot evict a tenant because they have mental illness. Now, I've shared the tenant who would light fires in the living room. Okay. You cannot evict them because they have a mental illness. You can evict. However, legally, you can't just walk in and put anybody out. So let me be clear. All right. So follow the laws, but you can evict if there is some sort of lease violation, or if, third and final point for today, if they pose a risk to others. All right. You're never obligated to allow tenants who pose a direct threat to others to remain in the rental property. All right. And so I shared information today because I want this to be helpful for landlords as well as tenants. Now, I told you in the beginning that I'm going to share information that's helpful for landlords. All right. So if you are a landlord and you have information, or you have questions rather, pertaining to mental health awareness, or any legal issue pertaining to the subject matter, go ahead and give this group a call, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. This is their website. They are a nonprofit group. They will not represent you as your attorney, but they will provide information for you. So this is helpful for landlords in the Washington, D.C. area. All right. And so at the start of my broadcast, I always ask what jurisdiction my viewers are tuned in from, because I want to provide information that is helpful for you where your rental property is. Because here's the thing, the laws may be different from state to state and city to city. So you can have property in the jurisdiction of maybe Atlanta. Those laws are going to be different from North Carolina or Maryland or DC. All right, so know what the law says in the particular jurisdiction that your rental property is in. And so if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop your question in the comment box. I want to make sure that I'm covering information and give you time to ask questions. So I'll wait a few seconds to see if any of you have questions or comments pertaining to this subject matter today. And then also, I just want to remind you that this is what I do each and every Monday at 7:30. So please make sure that you are tuning in each week. My goal is to share information to try to prevent people from going down the rabbit hole that some landlords have gone through. Because like I said, once we come out of this pandemic, we're going to see a lot more lawsuits. Okay. So I'm trying to prevent that from happening. All right. So, but I do want to thank you for joining me today. I'm super excited that you've taken time out of your schedule. I promise I would not hold you long. If you are watching on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe to that YouTube channel of mine. You'll be the first to get notification when I go live and when I upload videos, as I will be doing more, because this is what I do. I am called to this. I am true to this. I am passionate about making a difference for landlords as well as tenants. All right, so Lauren, let's go to your comment. While you can't ask about the disability, can you ask if they need any reasonable accommodations? That's a great question, Lauren. Thank you so much. Yes, you can definitely ask if your tenant or if the prospect, the applicant, is in need of accommodations. And that's what a good housing provider or landlord would do. You can definitely ask that, but make sure that if you are doing that, so Lauren, I'm not sure if that's part of your application process, but if that is part of your application process, then maybe put that on you can put that on your application and just make that a standard question for everybody. You don't want to just single that out. Okay. You don't want to single people out, but great question. Kelly, happy Monday, beautiful. Your question says, my tenant pulled a knife on the lawn service worker. The owner of the lawn service did not file a police report. I did not witness the incident. What do I need to do? Okay, so that's unfortunate that happened, Kelly. It's happened to me. And at one of my rental properties, the contractor did not file a police report. But what I did do was I followed up when I came into awareness of the situation. I had the company to write a statement to me indicating what happened, the date that it happened, the time that they were there, if they could describe the situation, if they could describe the tenant. All right. If it's a house, have them to be very detailed with the address. If it's an apartment, make sure they're identifying the address of the building as well as the apartment number if they know that information. So once you have that information, then you'll follow up with the tenant with the letter stating, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we are aware that there was a situation that happened on May 3rd at or around 8:04 p.m. between yourself and the lawn care contractor. Please be advised that according to the terms of our rental lease agreement, and then you want to state. So let me just make sure that it's in your lease. Okay. If it's a violation of the lease, indicate that when you write that letter. Okay. So you just want to say, well, this is a violation of your lease according to section 3, line item C. Be very detailed. You send that tenant a letter, and you make sure that you have a copy on file. All right. And when you can go to court to file for lease violation, if you have to do a 30-day notice to cure or quit, definitely do that. I'm not sure the jurisdiction that the rental property is in. I'm not sure if the courts are open in that jurisdiction. So you may or may not be able to take them to court now, but hold on to that information. And definitely, if you need legal advice, reach out to a landlord and tenant attorney. But great question. So I do hope that helps. All right, Sissy, what does a landlord have to provide for disabled tenants for safety in their apartments, like extended toilet seats, hand bars for the tubs, etc.? That's a great question. I strongly encourage, recommend, and coach landlords to, first of all, ask questions, as Lauren asks, if they need any type of reasonable accommodations. All right. modification rather. So accommodation is what you do when it comes to your rental policy. A modification is when it's pertaining to a repair or any physical changes that has to be done to the rental property. But if landlords are asking these questions, they'll already know upfront if some sort of accommodation has to be taken care of for the tenant. Now, if you or someone you know is a tenant and you need this, then reach out to the landlord in writing, asking for if it's a grad bar, if it's some sort of if it's anything that would require tenants to live a normal life. Go ahead, let the landlord know, put it in writing, asking for the landlord to do it. Now, here's the thing. Once the landlord receives that notification, they should respond in writing as well as maybe by phone. I don't know the capacity of the landlord. So let me not say what they must do. I'll just say what they should do. So they should follow up to find out the need. Now, here's the thing. And this is an example that I've given to my students, and they probably going to laugh. I see a couple of my students that's watching live now. So let's say there's a grad bar that's needed in the shower, right? Now, the landlord agrees to install the grad bar at the landlord's expense, okay? But let's say that there's a specific request that the grad bar be blinged out with rhinestones, has a Bluetooth speaker, and it costs maybe $1,000. Well, if it is going to create a financial hardship for private landlords, then in that case, the landlord can refuse to pay for that, but allow the tenant to pay for it. All right. So the landlord should, but if it creates a financial hardship, it would be in the best interest of the landlord to say, yes, we do approve for this to be installed professionally. Please don't have no back alley person trying to install something and it fall off, and then you complain to the landlord that they need to fix it. Won't work in your favor, okay? So I hope that helps. But yes, that's a great question. Tenants should definitely ask for it. If it creates a financial hardship, landlords can refuse to pay for the cost, but allow the tenants to bear the cost or the expense required for whatever is needed. Hey, Pete, happy Monday. You said you're still in the process of looking for one of those. Pete, let me know when you find one. All right, so guys, my time is up and I thank you for yours. This is what I do each and every Monday. Please share this information. Share this broadcast. And if you're watching the video on a replay, let me say thank you so much. By way of announcements, for those of you who have purchased my book, titled An Inspired Life, I am starting today. This is just a reminder that we're doing a 7-day challenge. Okay. So we're doing a 7-day challenge. So if you have already purchased the book, or if you're going to purchase the book within the next 6 days, we're doing a 7-day challenge starting today. The name of my book is An Inspired Life. You can find that on Amazon.com. And at the end of the 7-day, please make sure that either you inbox me or you email me. My email address is first name, last name, carissaspan@gmail.com, or you can always inbox me on Facebook. Email me a picture of the book. All right. So in the book, we're going to journal. We're going to write for 7 days. I'm not going to tell you what to write or what you should be doing in the book. When you get the book, you see it. That's totally up to you. So at the end of the 7 days, all right, so we're going to come back next week. I'm going to announce someone who has sent me that picture of the book. There's going to be $100 giveaway. All right. So it doesn't matter where you're watching from, where you're tuning from. There's $100 giveaway. I'll make sure that you have it. This is just my way to say thank you. I'm supporting you as you support me. And again, tune in each and every Monday right here on this Facebook or YouTube channel. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please share this information with somebody, like and share. Okay, so again, guys, my time is up. I do thank you for yours, and I hope that you can join me right here at 7:30 p.m. next Monday, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Bye for now.